Coming up, was it really the biggest gathering in Kansas City history? Fewer crowds as Kansas City's first streetcar arrives. Sprint announces thousands of layoffs. Open enrollment begins this week on year 3 of Obamacare. Why are Kansas and Missouri premiums so much higher than the rest of the country? And shuttering schools in the Kansas City, Missouri school district. Welcome everyone, I'm Nick Haynes. If you're tuning in for our healthcare special with Kathleen Sebelius, we're bringing you that next week now in an hour-long edition of the program, giving us the time to tackle the momentous events of the week here in Kansas City when every major network was reporting on what was happening right here in this place called home. We get an inside look at what was happening behind the scenes with former news hound, now City Director of Communications, Chris Hernandez. He joins us this half hour, along with Steve Vockrodt of the Pitch newspaper, Dana Wright, who co-anchored KMBZ's coverage of this once-in-a-generation event, and the Star's Dave Helling, who was also at the 1985 parade. You know, when you put a program like this together each week, there's often a judgment call, or what is the top headline of the week? Is anyone in doubt what it was this week?
It's unbelievable what they did! It's unbelievable what they did!
Government offices closed, schools shuttered their doors. This time Congress isn't responsible. It's a case of blue flu as an estimated 800,000 Kansas Cityans converge on downtown for a parade and rally to celebrate the World Series winning Royals. KCPT's Cole Blaze shooting the parade for us. Chris Hernandez, the city was estimating the crowds of 200,000 people. Did they purposely lowball that number? Did they really believe that fewer people would come than the 250,000 who attended the 1985 World Series parade?
You know, I think the organizers, the people on the parade committee, just wanted to be prepared for a base. And, you know, there are so many factors that go into how many people show up. And I think what was amazing this time was the weather was absolutely perfect. And then once the schools all canceled school, that just multiplied the crowd immensely. So we're just happy that everyone showed up and had a good time, celebrated in the city. What a great feeling this week for the entire city, not just the sports fans, but pretty much everyone.
And you were covering the whole thing there, Dana.
We were down kind of to the left of the stage, and one of the things I will say being there, and I think a lot of people felt the same way, you couldn't really see the forest for the trees. You could see that there were just an enormous amount of people there, but we really didn't even understand the scope from the ground. Just the enormous scope of this event until after when they released all the aerials. You know, because keep in mind, on the ground, we couldn't see the aerials. And when we saw those pictures later that evening, it almost looked fake. I said, you just almost cannot believe that that many people squeezed into this space for a common purpose that united this city. And by the way, only 3 arrests for very minor things, which is just a great message that I think we sent to the entire country, that this is how we do things here and this is how things can be done. And doggone it, we did it, didn't we?
But the biggest event in Kansas City history, Dave?
Well, in terms of people, it appears to be. They've had big crowds down there before. I think the estimates are going to be pushed back and forth for some time as to exactly how many people were down there. And I do think that one of the surprising things about how this was pulled off is the relative ease in which people could get in and get out. You know, I covered the Obama inaugural in Washington in 2009, and they had about 2 million people for that event. Yeah. But even Washington, which has that kind of thing all the time, had problems getting people in and out. You'll remember folks were trapped under a bridge for a while. So it is literally impossible to plan precisely for a crowd of this size. Given that reality, I thought they did a pretty good job.
You know, I see in the Kansas City Star lots of letters to the editor, one particularly this morning, Jeanette in Overland Park. The part no one is covering is that many people didn't get to see the parade in person. We did everything right, but there was no bus service, Steve.
Well, yeah, I went by the bus stop in Brookside on my way into the parade. I took my bike because I knew it was just going to be too much of a hassle to get to try and drive. And yeah, people were waiting, but I really, you know, in this instance, I think some of the criticisms are a little unfounded, because how does a city make its infrastructure ready for an event like this? It's almost unprecedented, the crowd size, especially squeezing it into downtown. I think all things considered, I think the city did a pretty good job of handling that.
Were there some worries that you had behind the scenes, Chris, that didn't actually transpire on parade day itself?
Sure. Anytime you plan a huge event like this, you have a big security team with a very organized plan for how to handle that. We had 400 police officers on the ground there. We had a lot of mutual aid with state troopers and others who were there. And there was a big security plan. They use it, they expand it for something like this. And then, as Dana pointed out already, only 3 arrests for very minor infractions. I mean, that is amazing. This morning I was talking with my boss, the city manager, Troy Schulte, and he said, starting almost immediately after the event, he started getting phone calls from other city managers and cities around the country. He even got a call from someone in Australia, all asking the same question. How did you do that event so big, so well, and no problems?
Well, let's show some video, if we can, from last year's San Francisco, which won the World Series. The Giants win the World Series. This is what happens there last year when they win.
San Francisco police arrested 40 people during celebrations last night. Most of the arrests were for public drunkenness following the Giants' win over the Kansas City Royals. Police Chief Greg Suhr says some officers were pelted with bottles as they tried to disperse the crowds. 3 officers were treated for injuries after being hit by bottles. Police say 2 people were shot, another person was stabbed in separate incidents. One of the hardest hit areas was the Mission District. Fans there were out in force. Some of them lit fires, others broke windows and hurled bottles at police.
How does all of that happen then in a city like that, and we have 800,000 and it doesn't happen here?
I think what Kansas City showed the world is that there is a way to celebrate with style and class, and we did it.
I never worried about it. I never thought we would see that scene played out here. People were too happy, Nick. People were too excited about what this meant for all of us and the children. And there was an 80-year-old woman, I'll never forget this story, one of the firefighters told us, who walked like 15 blocks to get there. She was 80 years old. And so I just don't think we had the atmosphere that maybe they had in San Francisco. People were so nice and kind.
Some luck was involved too, Nick, because the scenes you just showed from San Francisco weren't the victory parade. It was after they actually won, the day of the game. In this case, the Royals won in an extra inning game on a Sunday night, just around 11:30. That's not prime time for people to rush out into the streets and light bonfires. There was some celebration, and it was people were well behaved, but again, there was some luck involved in that. And then, as Chris points out, I think this is critical to understand about the parade, the weather was phenomenal. So you didn't have people cold and frustrated and hungry. It was a glorious day, sun was shining. People were very patient. That's, you know, that some of that is luck. Some of that is the classic behavior of Kansas City.
Some people, of course, commending and honoring Kansas City Police Chief Darrell Forte for a lot of this too. By the way, he will be winning a Civility Award next week at Rockhurst University. They have a terrific host, by the way. Oh, it's me. You can still attend the Consensus 2015 Civility Awards. To register, go to consensuskc.org. I should point out also, when we talked about the size of this whole parade and 800,000 people, how does that compare with other kinds of big events we've had in Kansas City? Well, we've been pouring through the archives right here at KCPT to take a look at how this looked compared to other crowds in our metro's history. It was a huge deal when Union Station first opened its doors in 1914. How about crowds reported at the time of 100,000? 7 years later, even more gathered for the groundbreaking of Liberty Memorial, an uninterrupted sea of humanity, according to news accounts of the time, which gathered together World War I commanders and Vice President Calvin Coolidge.
65 horsepower trap that might pop wide open, Rats.
It may seem like a long time ago, but the Chiefs once won a Super Bowl. That was in 1970. More than 100,000 gathered for a ticker-tape parade for them. 1972 saw the death of President Harry Truman. An estimated 75,000 people endured mile-long lines to pass his flag-draped coffin in Independence. In '85, the Royals win their first World Series. News stories of the parade put the crowd at 250,000. And then, of course, there's the annual Plaza lighting ceremony, which is sometimes quoted as having crowds as big as 250,000 strong. But those estimates have been cut back by experts on crowd data, who put the figure more realistically between 50 and 90,000. Okay, we're putting it into perspective for you on this program. Some people asking about the parade, Chris, this time around. Why, though, would you have such a short parade? Could you have expanded the parade so that more people could see it and there would have been less crowds in one condensed area? Could it have been longer?
Yes, it could have. I'll give you some inside information here, Nick.
That's what we're looking for in this program.
When we were planning this last year in the run-up, the sudden run through the playoffs, the route would have been actually shorter. It would have only been about a mile from Grand, all the way down Grand from Sprint Center to Union Station. And then what happened this spring and summer is the Sports Commission, which helps organize this thing, they set an intern to work looking at parades and celebrations all over the country for various events, and basically came to the conclusion that most parades like this are about 2 miles. If you go much longer than that, the problem is your marching bands and the kids who are in the parade, the people who are walking in the parade, they get worn out.
Okay.
That's a bit of a problem.
What about having the parade on a Saturday?
That is impossible because the schedule is dictated by Major League Baseball. You have a 48-hour window to stage your celebration.
Okay, you have to do it within 48 hours.
Yeah, that's the rule everywhere.
Okay. Well, lots of other questions being asked this week, Dana. I loved some of the letters in the Star this week. Did we really need to cancel school for a parade? What message are we sending our kids? Are we saying that baseball is more important than education?
Yes, on that day, the answer is yes. No question in my mind. That is a day that people will remember. They'll remember where they were standing, how they felt, if they got to high-five one of the players. Have you looked at people's Facebook timelines? It is jam-packed with photos of that aerial image of all of the people there that day. I would have pulled my kids out regardless, and I think many, many people would have done the same. I applauded Kansas City and its school district finally at the 11th hour for saying, yes, we will let our kids out. And not just for the kids, Nick, but for the teachers who wanted to take their own children to remember this day as well. I think it was the right call.
Dave.
I agree with that. I mean, there are some things. I tried to write this a little bit in a column that ran this week, which suggests that there aren't many things really, Nick, and we've talked about this on the show. There aren't many things that actually most members of a community ever agree on. We argue about stuff all the time, particularly now. We're a very argumentative public world in Kansas City and across the country. And so when there is something we can all sort of agree on, it's pretty cool we can all get in one place and agree on it. And in this case, it was the Royals' victory, which I think captivated most of the people in the Kansas City area.
Well, this wasn't the only news story, of course, happening this week. While we had huge crowds at Union Station for the parade and for the rally, we also had the first streetcar coming into Kansas City this week. Where were the crowds for that, Chris Hernandez? This was supposed to be a big deal. First time in 50 years that we've had the streetcar coming into town.
A lot of people are excited about the streetcar, and it's great to see the first of 4 vehicles actually arrive in town. I can give you an update for today. They're actually have started the testing process, and it was out on the tracks moving through town today very slowly, because this is the first check for clearances to make sure it can make all the turns and doesn't have any interaction with the platforms. That's all working. And I was down there this morning, and for the first half of that, it worked flawlessly.
Now, what if we would have had the streetcar during the Royal Parade this week, Steve Ockrott? Would that have made a big difference?
I don't know about that. I mean, I think each car holds about 150 people, so in the context of the crowd that's there, I don't know how much of a people mover that is. So, yeah, I mean, maybe if it extends even further sometime down the future to, say, the Plaza, and they do a parade along that route, maybe it would have a bit more utility in that context.
I think some people are going to use the parade and say, hey, if we had light rail, if we had mass transit, more effective mass transit, we wouldn't have those problems, which is balderdash. because in communities that have robust light rail, like Washington, San Francisco, you still have problems when you have a crowd of that size. You can't build enough light rail cars or street cars to alleviate parking or the other problems that you had. And let me just say quickly, Nick, I was at the parade in the early part of it and ran into a public figure you would recognize, I won't use his name, who said, "Hey, this is why we need a downtown baseball stadium." You know, the Royals had a record attendance at the Truman Sports Complex this year because they won. The location of the stadium is not necessarily as important as the victories and losses of the club, but everyone is going to use this event for their own agenda, his or her own agenda politically going forward, and I think we'll see that for the next year.
We have a on-air host at KMBZ who lives in the River Market. He's one of these young, hip people that lives in the River Market.
Unlike the people around the
yeah,
table.
like none of us here.
Very much like the people around this table who say the words balderdash.
Cannot wait
Yes.
for these cars to be up and running. He said it's going to make my life easier. I can go to the grocery store. My wife and I are so excited. I'm waiting for this to affect me. If you live anywhere else but downtown, at this point, it doesn't really matter to me. I would still have to drive 20, 25 minutes in, park, hop on it, go from one location to the other, come back to my car, get in the car, go back south. I think this is a good starting point. I've kind of changed my mind about how I feel about these cars. I'm anxious for it to connect Brookside and South Kansas City.
But do you think having all of those people coming in, though, to the central core of the city created a sense of excitement for the city among people who may not come into town very often?
Well, yes, but I think there are other things that have happened downtown, including the Sprint Center and the Power and Light District, that have probably had a greater impact than the Royals winning. I did notice, by the way, Nick, and I thought this was interesting, that in 1985, the last time there was a Royal celebration, Union Station was a boarded up disaster by and large. There was a little restaurant there. So how much has changed from that project and the streetcars terminus on the south end, at Union Station? It'll be interesting to see if that part of the community actually picks up the pace a little bit as well.
Well, I would say you've just about hit the nail on the head because you have so many people coming into downtown to celebrate the success of the teams, whether it's for the parade and rally or just to watch the playoff games at the Power and Light, that it really shows people who haven't checked out downtown lately what is happening there. And it's not just the team, it's the tech scene, it's the art and culture scene, the restaurant scene. It's all happening now as part of that downtown resurgence. And a lot more people are finding out about that because of the success of the team.
Well, the city estimates the World Series parade cost $350,000. Could there be additional costs, too, that we can't quantify, like lost votes? Tuesday was also election day for some people in our metro. On the ballot, school board races, 2 Missouri House seats in Kansas City, and sales tax questions in Independence. And while the Kansas City Election Board was predicting just a modest turnout of 10 to 15% because of the parade, how many showed up? How about 7%? Should we have canceled the parade because of Election Day, Steve?
Well, apparently you couldn't because of Major League Baseball rules, and you know this election was probably going to be a low turnout election anyway, given that some of them were special election issues. The independence sales tax question lost by 56 votes. That's a very narrow margin. You have to wonder whether the parade affected that one way or the other. But I mean, that's democracy. I mean, democracy is up to the people who show up.
How many people in Tuesday's crowd will see their jubilant mood cut short because of a pink slip? One of Kansas City's largest employers, Sprint, announcing thousands of layoffs this week as part of a plan to cut the wireless company's costs by $2 billion a year. Why the need to cut so drastically, and what are the implications for Kansas City, Steve?
Well, the company would say that their operating costs are still way too high. They're doing a pretty good job of adding customers, but even with those customer gains, they're still losing a lot of money, and for them, the path to maybe profitability someday in the future rests on cutting those costs. And like with a lot of companies, personnel costs are one of your heftiest line items.
Along with personnel costs, they've also been cutting back on a major multi-year sponsorship deal with the NBA. They've cut back on a major multi-year sponsorship deal with NASCAR, which now some people then say, well, what about Sprint Center? Will they continue to have naming rights on Sprint Center? Has there been any conversations at City Hall or any renegotiation efforts going on on about continuing Sprint's naming rights for Sprint Center?
Not that I'm personally aware of. I do know that a lot of that is run through our contract with AEG. So certainly if there was any change in the name on the center, that would be up to them to negotiate the sponsorship.
How much is that worth actually, though, to the city?
Well, we do get a check from AEG.
From
we
AEG,
share,
not from Sprint.
Right, not from Sprint, but we share in the profits generated at the Sprint Center through AEG. So it's part of that formula, obviously, but I wouldn't know the breakdown.
You know, naming rights are an important component of financing plans for most stadia and arenas these days. St. Louis is considering a new football stadium. They sold the naming rights to National Rental Car, which Kansas Cityans can chuckle at it a little bit, given their feelings about the Sprint Arena. But but it's not a direct check, Nick. I mean, it's not like Sprint is writing the city of Kansas City a check for this deal.
Well, you may not know it in Kansas City because of so much attention being paid to the Royals, but open enrollment began this week on year 3 of Obamacare, and penalties for not getting coverage have doubled to almost $700, and on both sides of state line, costs for the most widely purchased plan is going up much higher than the national average. The Department of Health looking at average hikes of just over 6% in benchmark cities. But in Kansas City, premiums here jumping 20%. Why so different here, Steve Vockrodt?
Well, some of the providers are getting out of it. They don't see that it's working out to their benefit, so that's part of it. But you're right. I mean, some of these premium increases are really going to hit families and individuals going forward. We'll see how it plays out over a longer term, but yeah, it's definitely a big jump.
You know, I thought it was interesting. Our E.J. Becker sat down with the president in the Oval Office this week and asked him about this very thing, that there are Kansas Cityans who are writing in that wanted us to ask the president what gives with these premiums. And his message was, you know, his talking points were right down the line. He said they're not looking hard enough. And he said, I would urge you, if your premiums have gone up and you're unhappy, to go back to the exchange, find one of the navigators here in town, and essentially look harder for savings. I think there are many people around town who will tell you they have looked, and for whatever reason, their personal situation or their employment situation, they have not found what they are looking for on the exchange.
You can find cheaper plans, but it's less coverage.
Right.
That's so. And I think one of the things that the statistics show nationwide, and I think it's playing out in our region, Nick, is the people who are not signing up for health insurance tend to be younger people who are healthy, don't feel like they need it. That bends the cost curve for insurers to older, sicker people. That's particularly a problem in states like Missouri and Kansas with an older population. And so the cost for those insurers goes up. And when that happens, they pass that on to people in terms of what they pay in premiums. That's just how the insurance market works. So the target really has to be younger people who are uninsured now, not insured through work or some other mechanism, to try to get them into the pool. And that's been a problem here and across the country as well.
Well, next week on the program, we delve into healthcare when we're joined by the woman who once ran the nation's healthcare system, former Health Secretary and Kansas Governor Kathleen Sebelius. Please join us for that. Well, just weeks after the Kansas City, Missouri School District failed to secure full accreditation, there are plans this week to close schools. Southwest High School proposed for closure, along with 2 elementary schools, Crispus Attucks and Satchel Paige Elementary School. The district says this is not about saving money like the last round of layoffs. So what is this about, Steve Vockrodt?
Part of it's about declining enrollment, which is an ongoing issue with the school district. And you know, Southwest closure is going to be a very interesting closure to observe over the future, because that's right in the center of a lot of neighborhoods, a lot of critical neighborhoods in that school district, and how they, who they partner up with, or if they consider selling it in the future, will be a pretty critical decision for the school district.
We can talk about a World Series win, Chris Hernandez, and having a streetcar and all of this momentum building downtown. But still, this issue of the Kansas City, Missouri School District remains a pressing issue for the city. And so, I mean, what is the response of the city to this? Is it that simply that there are 15 actual districts in the city boundaries, and that you have many choices?
Well, it's not that, Nick. It's partially that, but as far as the city is concerned, what people need to realize is that, yes, there are 15 different school districts who have parts of their districts within the city limits of Kansas City, Missouri, but also that the city has zero authority over any of those districts. They are all run independently by their own school boards. The mayor, the city manager, they have no authority to say or do anything to control the operations of those districts. Now, having said that, it is very important to the city to make sure that we have a strong education system here. And what we can do as a city is to make sure that we are continuing to improve our basic city services and making sure there is a good quality of life in the city, because that's what is going to attract residents back into the city to enroll their kids in those schools.
But I know you would agree education is the most important service one can give its community. And I think people are leery of big decisions like this. You remember Dr. Covington came in and closed, 30 schools, and that was in the name of efficiency. How does this get us closer to a better, if not more efficient, Kansas City, Missouri school district? It's something we've been talking about now, Dave, for decades, is it not?
Yeah, not only that, but you have a problem with what to do with the building. I mean, I think that one of the biggest problems in Kansas City is that it is dotted with abandoned school buildings for which no purpose has been yet found or any proposed reuse. Now, that Steve suggests that might be different at Southwest. We'll see, but empty school buildings can really hurt a neighborhood, and we haven't really figured out a way to answer that problem yet.
Yeah, and I would also say that the city does partner with the Kansas City, Missouri School District in many different ways to try to be as supportive as we can. Certainly the mayor has his Turn the Page initiative to try to encourage early education and childhood reading. So there are things we can do to try to partner with and be supportive.
But very quickly, I see that some school district parents spearheading a petition drive this week to end sort of tax breaks for this new BNIM architecture building in the Crossroads, saying that the city is actually hurting them, taking money away from the school district, Steve.
Right, and that's been an ongoing argument. And you look around in different school districts, and different TIF deals get struck in different parts of the city. I think there's some parents in the Kansas City Public School District who feel like those deals aren't as favorable for that school district.
And that is our Week in Review. Our thanks to our news reviewers from The Pitch, Steve Vokrot, and the Star's Dave Helling. From Dana and Parks on KMBZ, and our special news reviewer, Chris Hernandez, City Communications Director at City Hall. I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us at KCPT, thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.